This magical story begins by showing a place in America where there has been a severe shortage of water. People are so desperate for drinking water that they are willing to pay millions of dollars for it, meaning that the importance of water in this area is no less than $1 million. These events had only recently begun and were gradually spreading across the entire Earth. In a way, humans were finally realizing the value of drinking water, and water had become a kind of currency for them. This meant that transactions were starting to happen in exchange for water instead of other things, and the conditions on Earth were becoming increasingly dire. Now we are introduced to a criminal named Ruth, who is escaping from police custody. Many police officers are chasing Ruth, but she easily evades them and quickly enters a hotel. Ruth pays for a room in the hotel and buys a little water, which costs more than the hotel fare. She goes straight to her room and cleans the wounds on her body because those police officers had forcibly restrained her to extract information. Ruth is in a lot of pain, but she manages to treat herself and falls asleep for a bit. As Ruth lies on the bed, her body suddenly begins to shake. In fact, she is having a seizure that she has experienced since childhood. Here, a secret is revealed: the female members of Ruth's family have some strange powers. With this power, they can break any object into tiny pieces and transfer those objects anywhere they wish. However, when Ruth discovered her abilities as a child and slowly began to learn them, her body reacted strangely. Whenever she used her ability, she would have bizarre dreams, and her body would tremble intensely. Whenever Ruth had these seizures, there would be an earthquake in the surrounding area, and perhaps she was experiencing one of those seizures at this moment. Ruth had an idea that her seizure had come, meaning an earthquake would happen shortly. That's why she immediately tells the hotel manager to take her daughter to a safe place because an earthquake is about to occur here shortly. Ruth places the important items in her room on the ground to prevent them from breaking. After a little while, a significant earthquake strikes, which has become almost normal. This earthquake causes a lot of destruction. Now we see some police officers who have arrived at the hotel to search for Ruth, but she is not going to wait for them. She escapes through the window to the other side and drives away in a police officer's car, meaning the police have still not been able to catch her. When morning arrives, Ruth drives the police car to a cafe to have breakfast. Suddenly, Ruth meets a man named Bill. He offers her a coffee to get to know her better, but Ruth is not interested in any of that. She simply does her thing and immediately heads outside to her car, but she notices that a police officer is still inspecting her vehicle. This makes Ruth a bit nervous. Just then, Bill calls her over to his car to give her a ride. Ruth has no other option, so she gets into Bill's car to avoid being seen by the police. Bill takes Ruth far away to ensure she reaches a safe place, but then he reveals a truth: he came to capture her and needs her. As soon as Ruth hears this, she tells Bill to stop the car and prepares to attack him. But then Bill shares another truth: he is a scientist, and he has been looking for her for several days to conduct research on her. Bill tells Ruth that he needs her blood sample to understand the powers she possesses. However, Ruth does not want to do this at all, so she breaks the window of Bill's car and runs away. Continuing her escape, Ruth travels until she reaches a gas station, where she starts gathering some necessary supplies. However, she does not stay there for long. Bill, who is quite injured, arrives at the gas station while chasing after Ruth. Bill starts asking about Ruth, wondering if a lady had come there, and the shopkeeper informs him that a girl had indeed come but has since left. Ruth is very hungry, so she heads straight to a restaurant and asks a lady for food. However, Ruth clearly states that she has no money and offers to wash dishes in return. The lady agrees, and Ruth has to do all the tasks she requested. After morning arrives, Ruth quickly leaves as she has no options left except to return home. Therefore, she returns to her house, which is located right in the middle of the forest. There, Ruth sees her mother, Bo, who is behaving strangely while smoking a cigarette. It is revealed that Ruth's mother, Bo, also possesses similar abilities, as she is converting her cigarette into small particles and restoring it back into a strange colored form. All of this is very odd and magical. However, Ruth has nowhere else to go for protection, so she comes back home. When Bo sees Ruth, she is quite shocked, as she had kept Ruth away from there for a reason. In fact, Ruth has a daughter named Lena, who also has the same abilities that Ruth possesses. Ruth now tells her mother, Bo, that her abilities are becoming completely out of control and that she had multiple seizures last night. Bo understands that if Ruth's seizures are increasing, it must have drawn the attention of many people. If the world discovers these abilities, Ruth will surely be caught. This was the very reason Ruth had left her home to escape forever, because she didn't want to endanger her daughter Lena with the seizures she experiences. Therefore, Ruth and her mother, Bo, decided together that they would go far away. Yet, somewhere deep down, Ruth is very worried about her daughter. She wants to stay in the same place for a while so that those who are after her are less likely to find her. For a while, Ruth stops thinking about her mother, Bo, and she finds this to be a sensible decision. So, she gives Ruth permission to stay there, but she arranges for Ruth to stay a little distance away so that, no matter what happens, her daughter Lena won't be affected. In a way, Ruth is unable to meet her family in her own home, and this is solely due to the genetically advanced abilities they all possess, which have become a curse for them. When Bo brings some food for Ruth, she starts asking about her daughter Lena. Bo explains that Lena is more sensible than Ruth and can control all her powers. She has abilities similar to Ruth's, allowing her to convert anything into tiny particles. After eating, Ruth goes to sleep, but she begins to have seizures again. The seizures cause her a lot of pain, and suddenly, an earthquake begins due to her convulsions. Everything around them starts to shake, which is why she had brought Lena there to protect her. After a while, when Ruth comes to her senses, she goes outside to see if anyone is hurt. Finally, after such a long time, Ruth is face to face with her daughter. Since Lena is still young, she doesn't pay much attention but recognizes her mother. For the time being, everyone gathers together, and they have dinner together. Ruth expresses her gratitude to Bo for taking care of Lena in her absence. However, Ruth makes another request: if they all help restore her old powers, the seizures that trouble her constantly could stop for good. When Ruth was about to give birth to Lena, her seizures had stopped, but recently, they had increased so much that they were causing earthquakes around her. Now, Ruth felt dependent on both of them. In casual conversation, Ruth asked her daughter Lena what abilities she possessed. Lena then demonstrates by breaking a nearby pot into small pieces and creates several strange structures that look quite amazing. In that moment, Ruth feels proud of her daughter. Despite all the difficulties, Lena received good training, and Ruth decided that no matter what happened, she would not let her daughter fall into the wrong hands. Now, it is shown that Bill is continuously trying to locate Ruth's entire family because by collecting their blood samples, he aims to conduct research on them and uncover the secrets of their magical abilities. We are introduced to another sheriff named Alice, who is also investigating this case to learn more about them. Meanwhile, Lena and Ruth are working together to help restore Ruth's old powers. In a way, they are training Ruth to regain her abilities because this is the only way to stop her seizure condition. If the condition does not improve, others will find out about the earthquakes, which could lead to their exact location being tracked. Ruth would never want her entire family to be in danger because of her, so she begins intense training, focusing on everything that could help her regain her old powers. Lena assists her a lot, but initially, Ruth struggles to perform any tasks because she had stopped using her powers for a long time. Nevertheless, Ruth does not give up and continues to focus on her training. One day, Bo and Lena go to a supermarket to get some food, but the shocking thing is that Bill is also there, actively searching for Ruth. As he scans the area, he spots Lena and realizes that she must be Ruth's daughter because she resembles Ruth closely. However, since Lena is with Bo at the time, Bill does not attack directly. Instead, he approaches Lena and secretly attaches a tracker to her body, allowing him to track her location wherever she goes. Bill begins to keep a close watch on them to capture Ruth and her entire family. It is revealed that the sheriff named Alice is none other than Ruth's father, who does not want Ruth's life to be in danger. Therefore, Alice approaches Bo and explains everything about how Ruth and her daughter are in peril, as many scientists are searching for them to conduct experiments. Ruth must quickly discover her abilities and stop her seizure condition for the safety of both herself and her daughter. She understands this completely, and starting the next day, she begins training under Bo's guidance. Weeks pass, and Ruth diligently follows the techniques taught by Bo, although she hasn't seen much progress yet. One day, Ruth takes a cup from her table and goes to sit on the roof, focusing all her attention on the cup to try and control its tiny particles. However, the cup does not respond. But when she looks up, she notices that clouds are starting to form, indicating that Ruth, who initially tried to control the cup, is now manipulating the clouds on a much larger scale. Ruth is unaware of this development, but her concentration is interrupted when Bo calls for her, causing the cloud formation to dissipate. Now that Ruth has gone to Bo, she has no idea how significantly she used her powers. Meanwhile, Bill is shown gathering a group of scientists to track down Ruth's location. Using the tracker, he finds out where Ruth's family is residing. Bill is convincing a senior officer that they need to go there as soon as possible. This senior officer also wants to use Ruth and her abilities for his own purposes, as his company has the idea that if they possess those abilities, they could control the weather across the Earth, leading to a significant invention for humanity. Therefore, the senior officer warns Bill to find and extract the family as quickly as possible, otherwise, he threatens to have Bill fired from the company. Bill now has very little time left. To find her family, he spreads many people around the forest so that they can locate Ruth's family as quickly as possible. The next day, Alice learns everything and comes directly to inform Bo. She tells him that she is bringing a whole army of scientists to capture Ruth and her daughter, Lena. Therefore, she hands Ruth the car keys and advises her to take her daughter and leave far away so that the scientists can never catch them. However, Ruth replies that she does not want to put her daughter's life in danger under any circumstances. Thus, she intentionally does not take her daughter with her and leaves her with Bo. Ruth believes that if she goes the other way, the scientists' attention will be on her, keeping her daughter Lena completely safe. Ruth quickly takes the car and heads towards a deserted road. She has no idea where she will go or how she will survive, but she arrives at her unidentifiable location and starts collecting a lot of petrol. She cannot stop at one place because the team of scientists is pursuing her. While Ruth is collecting petrol at the station, she suddenly starts experiencing some visions. These are the same visions that have troubled her from the beginning. In this entire vision, she finds herself in a strange room where dirty water is slowly filling up, and she is being surrounded on all sides. Suddenly, Ruth begins to have seizures and falls to the ground, unable to control herself. In this vision, Ruth sees the hands and feet of a child, but the child's face is not clearly visible. This time, Ruth makes a concerted effort to see and understand her visions, trying to decipher what they are trying to tell her. Ruth is severely injured and lies on the ground, trying to recover. Due to her seizure, the ground around her starts to crack as the possibility of an earthquake begins to rise. If this continues, the entire team of scientists will discover Ruth's location, and they would capture her and her family. Therefore, Ruth began to focus intensely on her mind. She was able to identify her visions quite well, in which she imagined herself inside that chamber, with water filling up all around. Suddenly, Ruth hears her daughter Lena's cries. In a panic, Ruth starts looking around and searching in the water because she loves Lena very much. After searching for a while, Ruth finally finds Lena, who is quite small. After taking Lena in her arms, Ruth feels immense joy. After a moment, when Ruth looks at her little daughter's face, she is so beautiful that Ruth becomes completely calm. Suddenly, the seizures that Ruth was experiencing in reality stop on their own. Ruth realizes that if she wants to gain control over her seizures, it is very important for her to have her daughter by her side. That was the only reason she could regain her lost powers. Now, in reality, she becomes completely normal, and a lot of confidence begins to fill her. As she heads towards her car, colorful things start forming around her. These are nothing but the many powers within Ruth that have begun to regenerate after such a long time. Ruth is able to control all these things well. This means that Ruth has regained control over her visions and seizures, and she has returned to her old form. Instead of going somewhere, Ruth goes straight back home to save her family and her daughter. But at home, there is only Alice, who tells Ruth that after she left, Bill and all his scientists came here and kidnapped her daughter Lena, taking her away. Ruth is completely shocked by this news and wonders how this could happen. After a while, when she arrives there, she learns that when Bill and his scientists came, Lena had started using her magic to protect herself. Seeing all this, Bill realized that Lena has abilities like her mother. That was the reason they took Lena with them for experimentation. But now, Ruth cannot just sit idly by. She had to save her daughter at any cost. Ruth had informed her mother Bo that her powers had returned, and she was determined to rescue her daughter. Ruth headed straight towards the laboratory where her daughter was being held captive. Following closely behind were Bo and Alice, both concerned for Ruth and Lena. Inside a large chamber, Lena was shown, trapped within. She was trying to use her abilities to convert the door into small particles. However, she could only manage a little, as she didn't yet have enough power to convert large objects into particles, and thus she was unsuccessful in escaping. But now, Ruth had arrived at that location and was determined to save her daughter. She began using her true abilities and powers. Ruth had gathered so much energy that she was connecting all the small clouds present in the sky. Both she and Alice watched the whole scene with great ease. Ruth accomplished a significant feat by using her ability to make rain fall from those clouds. In a short time, it began to rain in the entire area. The surprising thing was that it hadn't rained in this region for years, and now they would have no shortage of water. Bill and all his scientific colleagues quickly came outside upon seeing the rain and realized that Ruth must have been responsible for it. They all pointed their guns at Ruth and demanded that she come with them so they could research her abilities. Ruth couldn't act against them because her daughter was in their custody. She was even ready to surrender, but then she arrived and used her powers to convert all the officers' guns into particles. The officers were immediately frightened by this dangerous sight. Meanwhile, Bo made all the particles in front of Lena disappear so that Ruth's daughter could safely reach her. After a long time, Ruth finally reunites with her daughter, and she feels immensely happy. But now Bo told Bill and his group of scientists that she was ready for the experiments they wanted to conduct. However, after her arrival, they had to stop pursuing Ruth and Lena. They had every right to live freely. Bill and his scientific colleagues agreed to this deal. After that, Bo instructed Ruth and Lena to leave and gave them a small piece of paper. Ruth and Lena then drove away to a distant place. Meanwhile, Bo entered the building with Bill and all the scientists, where experiments would be conducted on her and her abilities would be examined. Everything was set right, and now Ruth and Lena were sitting in a car, heading far away. On that small piece of paper, Bo had written that they should somehow reach London and meet a girl named Jenda, who would guide them on the way forward. By going to her, they would learn how to use their abilities properly. Both were very happy and set out on a long journey. Our adventurous story comes to an end here.